Good afternoon. I'm going to take you on a journey to the impossible, or maybe the journey of the possible, maybe a journey of hope. It's part of a bigger project which is called Via Pan, where I traveled overland from the tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego, Patagonia, to the north of Alaska, to visualize and investigate contemporary migration in the Americas. But first, I would like to visit a prison with you in San Salvador, El Salvador. A prison which houses a few thousand prisoners. Obviously, you need permission to visit the prison. So I went to the Ministry of Justice and I asked, can I visit the prison? And the ministry said, sure you can. So come tomorrow, 8 in the morning, and we'll let you in. So I came in the morning at 8 o'clock. The big doors went open. And the director came to see me and said hello, and he said, I'm going to bring you two prisoners to interview. I said, but I'm supposed to go inside the prison. He said, that's too dangerous. I said, why is it too dangerous? He said, because we are not in control of this prison. We only are the guards outside. The prisoners control the prison. So it's too dangerous. So he brought two prisoners, I could interview them, but obviously I was not satisfied. As a photographer, you need to be there. So I went back to the Ministry of Justice and I pleaded and I said, I really have to go. And they said, it's really too dangerous. You probably get kidnapped and then we are responsible. I said, I want to go. So in the end, I had to sign a letter that they were not responsible. Came back the next morning and I was allowed in. The guard opened the cell door and quickly closed the door, locked the door, and 400 prisoners stared at me. And they are Maras. They're Mara Salvatrucha, one of the gangs in Central America. They live there. They're probably there for a lifetime, many of them. The good thing was that the prisoner I interviewed, I asked him if I could actually, if I would come and visit their cell, if he would protect me. And he said, yes, I will. He only was he was convicted of 13 murders. But he did receive me and I had to trust him with his blue eyes that this would be okay. So why do I bring you into a prison? Because it's the start and the cause of the mass migration towards the US. The funny thing was that when I was covering South America, I didn't meet a single person who said, I want to go to the US. The first person I met who wanted to go to the US was in Costa Rica, which is Central America already. But when I got to El Salvador, everybody wanted to go. And why? This is why. Because the societies of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, they're poisoned by the gangs. They control the country. They basically run the country. So people, they want to go. We assume that if people want to migrate, yes, they're looking for a better life. And we think that they migrate because they look for work. Every single person I met and asked, why are you going? They said, because we look for safety. So I did something to myself which was a little bit complicated, which was that I promised myself to travel overland because I wanted to experience what it is to be to travel distances and to be confronted with what's happening on the road. So the people who try to travel to the US cannot travel alone. They travel with coyotes, people who smuggle them. For us, they are often criminals. For them, they are heroes because they might be able to bring them to safety. The first obstacle will be the border with Guatemala. Not a real obstacle because it's a river, and the river has always been used for trade, so it's also local people who are just crossing the border to buy goods on the other side. But there's many migrants. They either take the rafts or they swim. The problem with the journey, and I realized how lucky I am that I have a Dutch passport, because on this whole journey I didn't need a single visa. Everybody here needs a visa who's local. So also if you're from Guatemala, you go to Mexico, you need a visa. It's rather easy to cross the river, right? But then the trouble starts. Because people pay an enormous amount to reach that border, to reach the border of the US. So like a single ticket with a smuggler from San Salvador to the US will cost you about $10,000 to $15,000. So on the other side, in Mexico, there's a train track. For Mexicans, it's not really a problem. They can just take the bus and go to the US border and try to jump the border. For Central Americans, it's a different story. They have to take the train. And this is not a passenger train, this is a cargo train. There are too many checkpoints on the roads, and the train is in that sense safer. But it's a very dangerous ride. They ride on top of the train. They have to change trains very often. Many, they fall off the train. So for many, the journey ends already in the first shelter, where they lost limbs because they fell off the train. So they're getting a prosthesis. Obviously, the trains don't have a real train schedule, so you have to wait to find the right train which goes in the right direction. It takes about 3 weeks to get from the Guatemalan-Mexican border to the US border. The prison in El Salvador. Central America is infested with gangs now. And migrants are becoming a main source of income, which I found very difficult to understand in the beginning. Because what happens with this train is that it's like the Wild West 2014. The train drives, they block the tracks, they come with SUVs, machine guns, they force the train to stop. And they take all people from the train and they kidnap them. So why would you kidnap a person who doesn't have probably money, borrowed all the money of the world to make this trip? Well, they contact the family. So if the family doesn't pay, you're not going to see your relative. It didn't get stopped when I was there. Otherwise, I maybe wouldn't have been here. I mean, it was a scary ride. It was a very scary ride. At the same time, the people who were with me on the train, I think they appreciated that I was with them, and they protected me. Because the problem as a photographer is often that you have to carry gear. So I'm like a walking ATM, right? But it was amazing how protective the people were for me. And I managed to get off safely, which is kind of a dilemma as well, because at the same time I'm a journalist, right? So you want to experience what people experience. So I was happy to get off safely, but at the same time, I don't know exactly what happens after with those people. You see, they like me. So what do we have to do with this, right? It's very far away from us. It's their problems, they can solve their own problems. That's often the attitude. But is that true, actually? I think, you know, I mean, we live in a welfare state, right? We have everything, more or less, what we wish. It's the inequality in the world which I think is becoming, it cannot stay, because if poverty is not lifted in several regions in the world, people will keep on coming, whether it's for economic reasons, whether it's for safety. The US border. As you probably know, they're building now a wall. The border of the US-Mexican border is about 3,000 kilometers long. Many billions of dollars are being invested to build this wall. It's 8 meters high, and it's with all kinds of sophisticated equipment, and the authorities hope to stop the people coming. As you probably heard, in the last couple of months, there was this huge amount of minors trying to get to the US. Often sent by their parents because they want their kids to be safe. Sometimes they have a mother or a father in the US already, or a relative, and they hope to find them. About 40,000 Border Patrol agents patrol the border every day. They say they're successful. They know what they apprehend, but obviously they don't know how many people get through. This is in Nogales, Arizona, where people, relatives on the Mexican side, see their relatives on the American side. They're not allowed to touch, because you can hand over packages. The last night in the desert, before trying to jump the border. What people do now, because before they would try to jump the border in urban areas, but now there the wall is completed. It's too high, it's too dangerous. If you try, you're probably going to die because you're going to fall off. So people walk along the border now. But it's Arizona, it's a desert. So by the time they find a place where they can jump, they consumed all their water. And nobody told them that it's going to take another 3 days before you're being picked up. You have to cross the desert in Arizona before you're being picked up. So a lot of people, if they made it here, they will die in the desert. So do we need walls? Maybe not. Those are women who have been picked up by the border police and are being deported back into Mexico. Mexicans, they will deport them over the border, over the land border. Central Americans, it's a different story. They call it air removals. So they will be flown back to their country of origin to prevent that they will try a second time. But before being deported, people spend a long, long time in detention. The special migration detention centers in the US, this is a shelter when people got out when they are being deported. Those are the name tags from the prison. Air removals. From Arizona alone, Phoenix, there's about 3 to 5 Boeings a day going to Central America. After being in detention. The problem with the detention centers, as many people said to me, American prison system is privatized. So the problem, people don't have a lawyer before they're getting deported. They're just waiting to be deported. But the detention centers, the prison companies who run those centers, they are being paid per prisoner per day. So it's in their interest to keep prisoners as long as possible. Yeah, I don't know why they body search you after you've been in prison for 6 months, but in Guatemala, they have now Guatemala International Airport, they have a special hall, arrival hall, for the people who arrive back from the US, which says, you're back in your country, you're back with your people. They get a sandwich, they get some juice, and then they get a one-way bus ticket to their town where they're originally from. And if you're lucky, family members are waiting for you to bring you back home. But that's where the problem starts. Because if you borrow $10,000 and you come back and you went with the promise that you would slowly send the money back because you would find some work, you come back with an incredible debt and your journey of hope is turned into a disaster. Thank you.